Marc Berman, New York Post, covers the New York Knicks, and he joins us here on Big Board Sports. It's draft day, draft night tonight, the Barclays, and looking forward to it. Mark, I appreciate a few minutes, and I don't know, you've been covering the NBA and the draft for a long time. I don't know that I can remember you when there's been a bigger buzz about this draft tonight.
Yeah, well, it's a really deep draft, for one, and all the moving parts of, Philadelphia and Celtics already swapping picks, the 1 and the 3. And, the Porzingis thing has added a little intrigue, although I'm told it's very unlikely he will get traded, but a lot of teams are trying to make a play for him. Phil obviously disappointed in Porzingis' postseason behavior, but it's a very big draft, a very good draft. Unlike last year's draft was kind of dull, and the rookie class was one of the worst rookie classes ever. The Rookie of the Year hasn't been named yet, but Saric probably wins it from Philadelphia, but it was a very poor class.
I agree with you. I don't think Zingis goes anywhere tonight, but my follow-up is how serious do you think Phil Jackson is about trading Kristaps Porzingis, and how much of it has to do with the fact that he is just so upset over the fact that Porzingis missed the exit interview?
Yeah, well, that's what this is all about. Porzingis doesn't miss the exit interview, the Knicks aren't getting any phone calls, and Phil is laissez-faire about the phone calls he gets. I mean, he's serious in listening to a great offer, and that's the issue. He wants to hit a home run, I'm told, a real, a top 4 pick and a standout player. He wants a 2-for-1 deal, at least. And, Porzingis, he has potential to be a superstar, but it's still potential. I mean, he's missed 25 games in the first 2 years. There could be some durability issues. It's clear he doesn't want to leave the Knicks despite this Cold War, as his brother keeps saying that he wants to stay in Knicks. Porzingis told me before he boarded a flight for Latvia, I love New York, and no, I don't want to trade, despite what he did. So I think it's very unlikely, but what this has occurred over the last 48 hours has just deepened the wounds between the two sides, and that's horrible.
I agree with you. I don't think anything will happen. But if something would happen tonight, let's say if something, what are some possibilities that could happen? The Knicks, that Phil Jackson could come out of this looking really good, because it looks really bad right now. I mean, no one's happy with Phil Jackson. What would Knicks fans be happy with? What could he pull off tonight, Mark?
Well, I mean, if he's able to get Phoenix to give him Devin Booker and the 4th pick, which would be probably Josh Jackson, the Kansas small forward, because it looks like Boston is going to take Tatum at 3. We wrote in late March that as much as the Knicks needed a point guard, if they ever got up in the lottery, Josh Jackson would be a very strong consideration as a replacement for Carmelo. But fans are going to be very upset if this Porzingis deal, if it happens, is not a whopper. I mean, they got to really smack it out of the park. He's such a popular player beyond everything else. But I think the Knicks will be, the Knicks fans will be happy enough if they get a point guard type, Monk or the French kid. I think a lot of fans would like to see Dennis Smith Jr., but he really doesn't fit into what Phil's idea of a triangle and team ball. He's more a pure athlete and a bad defender. But I don't think Frank Ntilikina would be booed. I'm sure some fans will boo because Monk could be on the board, but I just think fans will be content that that Porzingis is still a Knick by the end of the night.
Marc, Brian Mariano sitting in with Rodger here on Big Board Sports. So we've talked about the Knicks possibly moving up, but now with sources saying that the Spurs want to move up into the top 10 and give up Aldridge, do you see the Knicks as a buyer for that trade if possible?
Yeah, I saw that report. I mean, LaMarcus Aldridge, he's not young, and like Phil is thinking about the future. trying to get rid of Carmelo, and I mean, it's not like part of that program. I mean, he's not old either, but the Spurs don't really have a draft pick to give up. So for the Knicks to make a deal with San Antonio, I mean, I don't know what the Spurs could offer in terms of future draft picks or whatever to give up Porzingis. But, I mean, if you're thinking Porzingis would be in the deal, I would find that hard to believe.
Time with Marc Berman, New York Post, covering the NBA draft tonight and certainly the New York Knicks. Speaking of the Knicks, Mark, we had Jim Boeheim on this show yesterday, and he was pretty adamant that Melo needs to go to a team to win some games, maybe try to win a championship, and especially he needs to go because Phil Jackson has made it clear he doesn't want him there. Having said that, where do things stand right now? Because Jackson made it sound like maybe Carmelo wants to stay, and he has the no trade clause.
Yeah, I saw Boeheim. He did your show, and he did another radio show, and I saw a lot of the quotes. Boeheim has always been critical of the Knicks. He actually watches all the Knicks games on MSG Network up in Syracuse, and he's been very critical about Phil and past management and what they put around him. But Boeheim doesn't speak to Carmelo as much as he used to. Carmelo did donate the beautiful new gymnasium, but since he's had the marital issues with Lala, I think Carmelo is now thinking about staying for this season and then maybe opting out because he has an opt-out. I think if he wasn't going through his personal issues, I think he would be very amenable to a trade at this point. And yes, Phil did say last night that Carmelo has told him he may as well just want to stay. But Phil then said, but we have a lot of talking to do once July comes. Maybe Carmelo is going to force Phil to waive him, and then he gets to pick his own team. So that was not good news for people who want Carmelo traded. That no-trade clause could come very well in handy for Carmelo this summer. And again, I think if it wasn't for the personal issues, he'd want to leave. And
the no-trade clause is nobody's fault other than Phil Jackson, who gave him the no-trade clause.
In his defense, I think Phil never could have imagined Carmelo would want to stay here if they weren't winning. And the way when they re-signed that contract a few years ago, Carmelo was really hell-bent on winning right away, and Phil said, yes, that's what we're going to do. And he figured, all right, if we're not winning, I'm sure Carmelo will want to leave. I think he's stunned that Carmelo isn't banging the door to get out of town.
Mark, the 8th pick tonight, New York Knicks. I did read your column, so I know what your answer is going to be here, but we didn't leak it out to anybody who hasn't read the New York Post yet. So with the 8th overall pick in round 1, in your opinion, Marc Berman, who are the Knicks picking tonight? Yeah,
I mean, listen, there's some scouts who really love Monk, and even some scouts who really like Dennis Smith Jr., but the French League point guard, he's 18 years old, Frank Nicolina. He answers a lot of the requirements that Phil and Clarence Gaines really love. He's 6'5". He's got a great wingspan at 7 feet. Very good defender. Pass first point guard. He could work on his shot a little bit, but it's pretty good. He's a sponge, quick learner. Has that European thing going, and they have a lot of Europeans on their roster. And they're trying to rebuild. And this guy is probably not, he's a project, but, the first year, Monk will probably look better than him. But I think the Knicks are going to go for the big upside in the French League point guard, who, amazingly, after the draft, is flying back to France for the decisive Game 5 of the French League Finals. He's the starting point guard for Strasbourg.
And I was glad to see he's doing that because there were some conflicting reports that maybe he wasn't going to make it back. And I was like, really? He's not going to make it back to playing a championship game with the team that he has been with. And I'm sure they need him in a deciding game 5. So I'm glad to see that he's making that move. Now Mark, he's a good defender. He's going to buy into the triangle and all of that. He'll run the floor well. He'll do all the point guard chores. He's not really a big time scorer though, is he?
No, well, his French league stats, I think he averaged like 5 points a game, but in like 19, 20 minutes. I'm told the head coach loves balance. You know, no one scores a lot on that team. But it's still alarming to some of the Knicks people in the organization that he doesn't really want to take over a game. But he's 18. He's playing with 24-year-olds, 28-year-olds. So he needs to be more aggressive when the time is right to really take over and try to make something happen. And I think he's been reluctant. He knows it, too. He's talked about getting better at that. But the stats, when you look at, are very underwhelming. Porzingis' stats were also modest in Spain. I think he averaged 10 points a game in his final season and played for a losing team. At least Frank is on a potential champion.
One more for me. Are the only locks tonight Markelle Fultz, point guard, Washington to the Sixers, and then Lonzo Ball, point guard, UCLA to the Lakers. And then once you get to the Celtics, who knows what's going to happen from there on out?
Yeah, I think those are locked. As much as there's been talk about Magic, not sure about Lonzo, I cannot imagine him passing up the UCLA guy. I mean, no matter how bad his father is. I think the Celtics could even trade down. Ainge is giving off mixed signals, but still told Tatum over Jackson there. But yeah, listen, Fox will probably be in the top 5 or top 6. But yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty, and there could be a lot of trades. Even Dallas could move up ahead of the Knicks. They like both Dennis Smith and Frank Nicolina, so they could move to 7 and steal Frank away from the Knicks. But a lot of uncertainty. And, of course, the Porzingis thing, who knows at the last minute when the Suns are at bat and Josh Jackson's on the board and the Suns come up with some new variation of a deal with the Knicks. I don't see it happening, but you never know.
Marc Berman, busy day. I know you're crazy busy today. We appreciate you a lot here on Big Board Sports. Thanks for popping on for a few minutes on the draft, and have fun tonight.
Thanks a lot, Roger. Take it easy.